As Littleton, Colorado wakes up to the full scope of this tragedy at Columbine High School after the deadly school shooting yesterday, investigators are now on the scene trying to clear what is still an active crime scene. Investigators inside the high school trying to clear all of the bombs and explosives left behind. Meantime, the death toll now stands at 15 dead, the latest figures.
At the time, Columbine was by far the deadliest high school shooting in American history. In the 23 years since, there have been many, many more school shootings. And as those communities grieve, the surviving students and teachers try to cope with their new normal, their school, their hometown. It all becomes a household name for the worst possible reason. Columbine, Sandy Hook, Parkland, and now Robb Elementary. Frank DeAngelis is with us tonight. He is the former principal of Columbine High School, and he has made it his life's work to help other schools recover from such tragedies. Frank, you were doing that work this week. I know you reached out to the principal of Robb Elementary. What'd you say?
I left a message, and right now I remember right after Columbine, a principal from Heath High School reaching out to me after the shooting at Paducah and didn't even know what I needed. So I reached out and just said, please give me a call and explained, that we're here to help her, and I'm waiting to hear back. But there's another connection. I was involved with the Santa Fe shooting many years ago, and I ended up meeting with school board members and the superintendent to just help them deal with the aftermath of the horrific event.
How do you do that? What does your work look like? I know you're part of a network of principals who've had mass shootings at your schools, and you kind of come in and I don't want to say troubleshoot, but offer some pretty unique support.
Right. And it was a few years ago, and part of the National Association of Secondary School Principals, the director, Greg Wapples, called me and said, Frank, would you head up this committee? And there's about 29 of us that are part of it, in which we are administrators who have dealt with school shootings. And right now, what we're basically working on is a recovery network guide to deal with the aftermath, things dealing like with graduation or dealing with the aftermath of the media, things of this nature, and we're out there. And then usually what ends up happening since Columbine, almost every major shooting or all shootings, I reach out to the principal and I've been to various places. I've been to Sandy Hook, I've been to Parkland, and just go out and reach and talk to the faculty and answer any questions, meeting with parents, and recently doing a lot just through Zoom just to help these people with the recovery process.
People want answers now, and they are not happy with what they're getting from law enforcement and the response thus far. I know you experienced something similar with Columbine. What are these early days like when people are in trauma and just want answers?
It's very frustrating. And I think what we ended up seeing early on is, and I see this all the time, is the 5 stages of grief. Right now, some denial, but now there's some anger taking place. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is the narrative comes out right away, and things that we're still talking about 23 years later was things that were the narrative that were not necessarily accurate. And I think right now, just being able to understand they want answers, and justifiably so. I know in the state of Colorado, we had a school shooting at Arapahoe High School, and Claire Davis unfortunately lost her life, and the parents just wanted answers. And so state legislators passed the Claire Davis rule that does allow things to be opened up to find out exactly, and they just want to know, and they're entitled to know.
Let's talk about preventing shootings. There have been all sorts of ideas thrown around. They always are after a shooting. What do you think about hardening schools, arming teachers, making one entrance point? When I think back to Columbine, I remember looking at your sprawling campus. There couldn't have been one entrance.
No, we had many. And it was very interesting. Parents were concerned about the safety of our school. And I told our parents Columbine was probably the safest school in the world after Columbine. But what was real interesting to me is some students came in and they said, Mr. D, with all due respect, we know you love us, you want to keep us safe, but this is no longer like a school. And we get more anxious by seeing all this extra security. And there are ways to do things. But, the thing about arming teachers, I am not a proponent of that. Now, I need to preface that by saying there are some rural communities where it would take law enforcement some time to get there. but I'm not for it. And the reason I'm going to say this, I'm going to use myself as an example. I could go through gun training, gun safety programs, and things of that nature. What I don't have is that mental state. When I encountered the gunman on April 20th, and he's pointing a gun at me and he's getting ready to shoot me and these girls, if I was armed, I don't know if I could have shot that person because he was one of my students. And I would have tried to talk him down or reason. And if doing that mentality, having that mind mentality, that would have put the girls in danger. And when I talk to law enforcement people, they basically say, when we come in and we see a perpetrator, we're going to stop the killing. I don't know I could have done that because he was one of my students that was aiming a gun at me. But I am a strong proponent of school resource officers being in. And I think a lot of times what ends up happening is they get a bad rap. And when I go out and talk to administrators and school officials, a lot of times I hear administrators saying, well, if you act out, I'm going to send you down to the cops. And that gives a negative connotation to the police officers. The school resource officers we had at Columbine were unreal as far as developing relationships with the kids. They were a trusted source for the kids, and it was very enhancing. And so the thing that we see with a lot of these events, they're usually over within 5 minutes, and it makes you wonder if there was a school resource officer standing right there, that if the gunman would have walked into that school knowing that there's a good chance he would not have survived.
Frank, you just made us a lot smarter on all of this tonight. Imagine that, a principal facing off against a student. If they did have a weapon in their hand, could they fire at their own student? That is the world we're living in. Frank DeAngelis, thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.